Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I would like to welcome you to the UKZN's College of Agriculture, Engineering and Sciences Alumni Series talk. Before we proceed, a few house rules. Please note that we are on Zoom and the session will be recorded. So please ensure that your mic is muted. Please switch on to speaker view so that you see the speakers clearly. And we will have a question and answer session at the end of the talk. So please post any questions that you may have on our chats. I am your host for tonight, Ntokozo Dladla. Our guest speaker completed her Bachelor of Arts with honors in 2012 at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, majoring in Media and Cultural Studies, as well as English and French at undergraduate level. Passionate about language, education, and communication, she has applied her strengths and skills to developing networks to strengthen and promote her alma mater and its graduates, research, and community work. Since 2013, she has worked at UKZN as a networking facilitator for the Friends of UKZN Agriculture Alumni Association, linking agricultural science academics with their alumni and stakeholders. She is also the current primary journalist for the College of Agriculture, Engineering and Science at the university, reporting on scientific research, events, and achievements. The Friends of UKZN Agriculture Association, established in 2012, has focused on maintaining and extending the strong reputation of agricultural education built over decades at the UKZN through establishing a robust network of role players who are invested in the success of agriculture at UKZN and the graduates coming through these ranks. Ladies and gentlemen, may we please put our hands together with your mics muted, of course, for our very own Christine Cuénod, who will be telling us more about how to create strong networks, a craft, a career. Christine, if you could put your screen on so everyone can see who exactly I'm referring to.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Ntokozo. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us, Christine. Oh, great. So just to get started, you are a UKZN alumni and now you're working for the university. But to start off, can you just tell me about your experience at the university as a student who was one of the high achievers, if I might add?
Thanks. Right, so I did study at UKZN. It was right up the road from where I lived, which was very convenient. My dad is also a professor in grassland science, actually, so in the College of Agriculture, Engineering and Science. But I didn't head in that direction myself. I enjoyed science at school, but it wasn't my strongest point. So I joined the College of Humanities, and I really enjoyed the content of what I studied. It fit into my aptitudes, into the things that I enjoyed doing and learning about. I love reading, so spending my afternoons in books rather than in pracs, like the science students do, suited me just fine. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the content. I also studied with a close friend, so we started together, and that really helped make the experience even better. And it actually went very quickly, my years as a student, but I did enjoy it. It was, yeah, it's like no other time in your life, really.
Okay, great. It's always nice to hear that someone had a great experience in the university, because I can tell a different story. I'm sure my lecturers have a few stories about me, but I have my own stories. Seeing that you were one of the high achievers, I'm sure you had a set goal in mind in terms of where you're going career-wise. And I know that you are part of a lot of activities in the university and also a part of different institutions that recognize excellence, like the Golden Key institution. So what career did you think you were going to end up in?
I think I set out with a very clear trajectory in mind. I wanted to get into something media and communications related because it seemed like the best career path for what I was interested in. I really enjoy literature and languages, but I also know that there's not a lot of opportunity there. So I definitely didn't think that I would end up in agriculture. I can say that because I don't even think I set foot on the agriculture campus when I was a student, not once. I had friends that were studying there, but I did not pay any visits. So I didn't think it was agriculture. I didn't pick that direction. So I did see myself probably going into something media and communications related. I loved film and language. And so, but like most graduates, when I finished studying, it took me about 10 months to find really even any opportunities for full-time work. So it is tough out there, and especially when you're looking on the humanities side. But yes, I did see myself going to something communication and media related. That's what I hoped for. And I did kind of get there, but with an agriculture bent that I didn't expect.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting. I would have thought that when you are a high achiever and you get the dean's commendations and the high accolades, obviously when you get out, companies are just looking to grab you, to snatch you up, and you obviously get a job, which wasn't the case for you. And you're spending 10 months looking for work. I see that you did a few freelancing posts and you were self-employed at some points. Now, just tell me about the process of completing your degree within record time and getting all these high marks and the strain of now not finding the work that you had hoped you were working towards. Because every time people tell us, oh, work hard, once you get your marks in order, you get your degree, it's with flying colors. It's you all said. So how was that transition for you, having done all the things that you were supposed to do, but now finding it difficult to get employment?
I did really enjoy studying, and there was obviously a lot of conversation, when you're in honors about continuing to masters, but I felt like I wanted to get out and do something practical and gain experience before I went further, because I wasn't sure about what I could spend a year to 2 years studying. So when I finished honors, I thought I would look for employment, and I did do some of the things that I could do myself. I au paired for a bit, and I did some freelance graphic design and content writing, but it was tough to find employment. And it is a challenge. And I think as a new graduate, the problem is you also get out there and you think, I actually don't feel like I know what I'm doing. I don't feel like I have the experience. A degree prepares you very well for learning how to think and learning how to approach things, but it doesn't necessarily give you the practical skills. You have to learn those on the job, I find. So when I finished studying, a friend that I studied with after a few months was working with Lima Rural Development, and the MD of Lima, Duncan Stewart, was the founder of the Friends of UKZN Agriculture Alumni Association. And there was a gap there for the networking facilitator, and she put my name forward. So when I was in conversations about possibly taking this role and in interviews, I just thought, oh, I don't know that I'm the right fit. I don't know that, networking when you're a new graduate and it's in a field that you are not familiar with, when it comes to agriculture, I was not familiar with it at all. You think, I don't know that, I feel like I'm going in with no knowledge whatsoever and really starting from point zero and not really with the network. I sort of arrived on the job and had to just knock on doors and introduce myself and say, well, this is what our association does. And I had to just get my head around a big database of alumni. And so, yes, as a new graduate, it's very daunting just to find a job in the first place. And then when you enter the job, particularly one that's titled Networking Facilitator, to think to yourself, I don't really know that I have the networks to start with. And how am I going to do this? Because I need to really start from nothing, it felt like, and make friends and learn how to do it.
Okay, I'm glad you touched on what you're doing currently, because it's exactly why we're here today. I just want to find out, having come from a humanities background and now you basically submerged in something you have no idea how to navigate, it's completely new, you know no one, because you know how sometimes when people talk about networks, it's always someone their dad knows or their mother or like a family relative or a family friend. It's always someone they know directly, but they didn't have to create that. Now you were put in a position where you have to start from scratch. You don't know anyone, but you have this position and you have this duty that's been placed on you, but you don't know what you're doing. How did you find your feet? What were your first steps?
Well, I think, and I'm saying this with, hindsight, I think that I've learned a lot in the job, and I've learned that I think at the beginning, especially as a new graduate, you think to yourself, well, I can only contribute X, Y, or Z because I'm a humanities student. This is all I know. And I can only contribute those things, and that might not be the best fit for the role. But I would say I've learned not to limit what I think I can contribute to a network. And I think, when I started, I thought, as much as I could rely on asking, for example, my father questions because he was more familiar with the terrain than I was, I really had to make a go of it on my own and just start conversations with people. And I think what I've learned about networking and about my job in general and about being a working person in general is that things start with relationships, and it's not this extremely different thing from what you do in your normal life. It's just forming relationships with people based on who you are as people. And I think initially I didn't set out thinking that. I thought, oh, well, there's this big intimidating job and I'm not going to know what I'm doing. But yeah, you do just have to work with what you've got and just say, well, these are my skills. Maybe they're not precisely the fit for this, but how can I influence the job, and how does the job influence me? I think when I started the role, I thought, oh, well, I'm going to have to change who I am as a person to fit this role so that I sound like someone who knows anything about agriculture. But at the end of the day, as much as I have been learning and it has formed me, I think that you also learn that you form the job and you form the networks, and it grows in an organic way based on who you are as a person and based on the relationships that you form with the people around you as well.
That's
what question.
Yeah, it does. What actually is posing a different question to mind is that, firstly, this job you have now, it was suggested to you by a friend.
Yes.
And you took a chance and you went for it. You gave it your all and you immersed yourself in an unfamiliar field, but you worked your way through. What can you say to the audience about trying different things and not denying certain opportunities that are forwarded to you just because it's not something that you are looking for or something that you had in mind? What would you say to them about those opportunities or about those connections that they take for granted just because someone is a friend and not exactly an executive in leadership in the field that they are interested in?
Well, I think you have to sort of learn to, in a way, bloom where you planted, if I can use that expression. And a lot of graduates don't end up where they thought they would. And I think that what I've learned is, even if you don't end up where you thought you would, I remember starting the job and thinking, what am I doing in agriculture? And thinking, well, maybe this isn't going to be a long-term thing. And now it's been nearly 7 years. And actually, I think it's been nearly 8 years. So you actually start to build a good network where you end up. And you don't have to underestimate the value that you can contribute, even if it's not where you thought you'd end up, or not where you think you're the best fit. And you can grow in a direction where the job will begin to suit you, and where it's a stepping stone and a springboard into other things. So I think don't be totally intimidated by those opportunities. I remember in my interview, I remember some of the questions very clearly about whether I could. The one question was whether I could eat, breathe, sleep, and think this job. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I'm just a new graduate looking for a job. But I must say,
just hire me, just give me money, just hire me, I'll try.
I know. A few years in, though, you do realize, well, actually, it has become part of who I am, and I've become part of, what this job is. And I think also my advice would be to people to look for the gaps in the positions that you end up in, because you might find good fits for yourself in other gaps that you identify. I ended up working more closely with the college public relations team as well, which was almost a natural segue from the networking role and the communications element of that role. And, you also learn that there are gaps as you get to know people. And that's why networking is so key to the role, is as you get to know people, you see where the gaps are and you see where your strengths can contribute. And also don't be afraid to say, well, I don't know everything, and to learn from other people and to contribute what you can do. I mean, I think a lot of us think we'll go into workplaces and 8 to 5 and then I'm out of there and everything else is very separate in my life. But you do learn that you as a person contribute, and it's your whole person that contributes. So while, work-life balance is important and there are parts of your life that stay personal and separate from work, you do contribute to your role as a whole person. And I think so often we think, oh, well, this job is just a starting point, and then I'll move on to something else. And that was not what happened with me. And I'm really glad to see the progression and to see how getting to know people and getting to talk to people and getting to learn the industry and the environment that I was in just created these gaps and these spaces where I could say, oh, well, I can learn in that space and I can contribute in that space.
I think what you've just touched on is something that our audience needs to take note of. The fact that you as an individual, we always think that if we want to create a network, I have to be at a formal setting, like a conference or a university, or like a formal event, like a gala dinner. But what you've just said is that you don't necessarily, every opportunity that you get, every relationship that you build, that's an opportunity for you to build a network. So you're saying anyone can be your network, or it's specific people we need to look out for? Because I'm sure that wasn't the case with you, because a friend.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting environment to work in as a university, because you're working with people as they're on the cusp of their career as well. So I've gotten to know a lot of students, particularly senior students and postgraduate students, through my work as they're entering the field of work. And you just realize, you're speaking to someone who's just a postgraduate now, and they doing, student jobs, and they're demonstrating, and they filling in our reception office in the School of Agriculture, and you're speaking to people that are about to go out and make big waves. The UKZN alumni all over the place making waves, and it's wonderful as someone working with alumni to watch what people are achieving out there, and to know that, if you sit in your workplace and think, oh, well, they're just they're just a student, or it's not really the case. Everyone's got something to contribute, and you can learn from everyone. I've learned so much from students that I've sat with, from staff members I've sat with, there are really wonderful things happening. And like you say, networking, I think we think of it as something that you actively set out to do. And that's what I thought, which is why it's so intimidating at the beginning. But I realized as I progressed in the job and as I got to know people that networking is happening all the time, even when you're not aware of it, which is also why it's important to think about how you comport yourself and how you put yourself forward, because it's not about going to a networking event and handing over a business card. You often are your business card for a long time. So, you know, and don't disqualify or discount anybody from your network. It's creating relationships and creating this, you become almost part of this ecosystem when you are part of an organization, and when you fill in those gaps yourself and contribute your strengths. And so you're always networking, you contributing, you learning. And so I would, I definitely say to graduates, it's not even just 8 to 5, it's people that you talk to on the weekend. There've been times where I've bumped into someone and found out that they're an alumnus, because UKZN alumni are all over the world and everywhere. And you just make connections like that. It's incredible. So networking is happening all the time. And sometimes you meet someone at something where you think, well, they're not going to have much relevance to my role. And then suddenly you realize, oh, actually, there is some synergy there. There is something we have in common. And so, yes, networking is happening all the time. And don't discount who you can learn from and who you can include in your network. Often people think I have to go and make friends with the CEO of such and such an organization. That's often not the case. You join and you make connections with so many different people, and you'd be surprised where it ends up. It's fascinating to watch just the way the world is connected.
Very interesting. I see you have a lot of experience with networking. So I'd like to find out what would you say was your most challenging event where you had to build and where you had to network, but then you had challenges, because sometimes, as people, we're not always happy and we're not always in the mood to talk to people. So sometimes, you're feeling grumpy, you bump into people, you were not nice at that time. So obviously that person cannot be on network if you don't have good relations with them. What was the time, where was the time where you experienced hardship, but yet you still had to maintain the pace?
Well, there are probably a lot of examples I can give, but one that stands out that's fit more into my role with the college public relations office. And I mean, like I say, networks bleed into almost every area of your life. So it did fit in a lot with the agriculture, and I did leverage a lot of those networks. But it's an experience that we have in common, and it was organizing the Global Change Conference in 2016, I think it was. And taking on a conference like that, which is an amazing event put on by the Department of Science and Innovation and the National Research Foundation, is a huge challenge, but was wonderful to bring it to Durban's shores as well. And it was a very intense period of organization. It brings together so many different fields of science and so many different students. And so it was a very intense organizing event. And we also had student protests that year, which made our calendar at UKZN just not match up with the way the conference planning was going. So we had to host it at a different venue, and it was a very trying event, but it also was a massive opportunity, especially for a lot of our students. Some of our students did extremely well at that conference with the research that they're doing at UKZN. And so that was a challenging event, but you're also working with so many people at so many different organizations. You're working with people at the National Research Foundation and the Department of Science and Innovation and at Access, and you do learn, well, actually, I'm always on in this event, and as much as trying as it is, you're still building your network there. I think you sometimes think, okay, well, when I'm done with this, I probably won't interact with those people anymore, or I won't be in the space anymore. But actually, once you start making connections, it really just builds momentum into so many different areas. So there are still people that we interact with from that experience. And so, yes, it was a very challenging, I think it was about 6 to 8 months of planning, and Tokozo can tell some stories as well. but that was a big learning curve, and a wonderful one, a great thing to have the opportunity to be a part of and contribute to, and to get our students and our alumni to contribute to. But something like that, when you get an opportunity like that thrown at you in the workplace, when it creates networks, when it builds on the networks you already have, you do realize the importance of just how it's happening all the time. Everything that you undertake in your professional life builds your network in one way or another.
Okay, great. Global Change, you don't have to remind me. I remember that conference. It was intense. That's it. It was very intense, but we pulled through. And I think that's where I got my biggest lessons, as well as just a human being, just trying to navigate the world. That sometimes we just need to be a little nice to other people, because you bump into someone, next thing they're introducing the chairperson for this high institution, and this very same person you were having problems with, like earlier in the hallway, is now presenting this big thing. And that's when I actually saw that, you can't take people for granted when it comes to building. No. And it's consistent. It's always happening. It could happen least expected.
I think we assume that there's a lot of behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, but that line becomes quite blurred the longer you work, and the more you realize I'm interacting with people when I think it's behind the scenes and it's not. And I mean, there's lots of examples of that. We've had to do lots of events through my role as well, and create some events that we've never done before, and apply creativity. And there you really also need to leverage your networks, because you're looking to do something new often. Global Change was quite a new conference at the time that we hosted it. And some of the symposia we've done, the Ukalinga Symposium, which was also just bringing together a lot of different partners. UKZN Foundation was very key there, international funders. So you're always interacting with all these different people, and you just don't know when you're going to think, I remember that person from Global Change. That would be a great connection to bring into the symposium. And there again, the way you conduct yourself with people will make a big difference going forward.
Okay, yes, great. I think what I want to ask you now is, what would you say to someone who is a first-year student, a UKZN alumni who's been at home, who's been looking for a job? When is the right time to actually start building your network? Because now we know that, every relationship you have, every interaction, that's a possible network. That's your entry point. But now, when is the right time? Because there's all these other things we need to do: academic excellence, sports, mental health, family. With now the recent pandemic, there's a lot of pressures that are on us. And when would be the right time to start building a network?
Yeah, there are huge pressures on recent graduates. And I mean, because I run an alumni association, I do see how many unemployed graduates there are sitting out there and waiting for work. And I do, you watch on some of the networks that you use for networking, and you do watch, how people conduct themselves, and you watch and see what strange opportunities pop up that you wouldn't have considered. And often, yes, it is the high achieving students whose names get out there, and who seem to have this almost automatic promotion because they've done well at university. But at the same time, I think a lot of the very best networkers I know didn't necessarily do well at university, and started really from the bottom, and found their livelihood in very surprising ways. So I would say the best time to start building your network is obviously immediately, and keep in touch with people that you've studied with, and use opportunities. The strangest things can pop up as opportunities. I remember even as a student, I don't think I took the most advantage of the opportunities that were out there. I think I ignored the notice system when it popped up in my student email. And I use that all the time now to post things like we have, for example, Sansor, the seed organization in South Africa. pre-COVID, they would come and do workshops with postgraduate students, and you'd battle to get people to arrive for things like that, and yet it was a wonderful opportunity for networking. And so it's things like that. I think as a student, you just have to keep your ears to the ground and keep your eyes peeled, because some of those things you just don't know where those things are going to end up in, and what opportunities you're going to be privy to, what opportunities people are going to send your way because you arrived at something or because you volunteered to do something. And so it's often not just, oh, well, I have to do well, I have to really set myself apart on paper, on my CV. It's also how you interact with people and who you're speaking to and what opportunities you're not letting pass you by. There's students who are very involved and who do pay attention to things like that and who take initiative. I think that's the other important thing in networking and in your position, is to take initiative. There have been opportunities that I've had. I remember I did a gap year program, and which was very helpful when I finished school. And the one day somebody came through and they said, well, they're desperate for somebody to do some invitation. And I remember saying, well, like, it was just crickets, nobody was volunteering. And I remember saying, well, I have a free sort of like semi-Photoshop program on my computer at home, and I've just played around with it before, so I can try something for you if you like. And I did, and it just created it actually created work opportunities for me later on, where I could do some freelance graphic design while I was waiting or looking to find a job. So things like that. I think, often you don't want to volunteer and put up your hand, especially if you feel like, well, I don't know nearly enough to do that. I think that first thing I did was probably shocking if I look back at it now, but it really did contribute. It contributed to my development. So there are things like that. You can't know everything, but you can learn. And there are people around you that you can learn from. And there are people around you that will give you opportunities. There are people who will say, we're looking for students to work at such and such an event and volunteer to talk about the university, or I'm using that example because of where I'm situated now, or to come to this career fair and to do this. And those opportunities actually seem very mundane and everyday, but I've seen them work out so well also for other students around me that I've worked with, and that's using my networks. I've also tried to look for opportunities for other students that I see. So start immediately and don't discount where your networking can start and where it can take you.
You know what? I can attest to what you're saying, because I was a part of one of those SIDCO events that you organized.
Yes.
And one of the key things that I lived with from that meeting was that you need to use your networks. Getting a job is not only about putting your CV out there. Sometimes someone's going to tell you about a job, and like, your network does not necessarily mean nepotism. So just because someone is your network, it doesn't mean that you are guaranteed you're going to get the job. Sometimes you just need to know about the opportunity from your network so that you can apply yourself. And I think sometimes that's where some people get it confused, that just because you're saying have those networks, because someone else can come and say, oh yeah, but you got a certain position because you know this person, thinking you were just given that opportunity. Where I am now, it's purely through networks. I was asked to look after chicks for 2 days, and they were very specific, just 2 days at the Royal Show for the UKZN stand. And the girl was supposed to look after the chickens for those 2 days, was sick and could be available for the rest of the week. But then she never came in, because I came in there. I looked after those chicks like they were my babies. Everyone came in, they knew those were those chicks, don't touch them. They had food and lighting and everything. So don't take for granted the opportunities that you're given by these networks. Focus too much on myself. Can you tell us who did you look to for inspiration? Because obviously when you're starting something new, it can be scary, but then you look for people who could be your pillars of strength or encouragement, where you seek advice. And
It's a good question, and I also really liked your example that you gave, and the experience that you shared. I think it plays into that whole thing of you're a whole person when you go to work. So the things that you do outside of work aren't necessarily excluded from your experience when you're at work. You know, the fact that you are, for example, a parent, or a hobby that you have. You see people who join, I don't know, cricket clubs or soccer clubs, and the thing they have in common is that sport or that activity. But at home, one is a plumber and one is a dentist, and you do see people working with their networks in that way, where, oh, because they know that person from such and such an activity, they'll, you know, work together and fill in each other's gaps. It's how humans, I think, naturally behave. So it, like you say, it's not nepotism, but it is your networks a lot of the time, because people will gravitate to the people they know and the people that they have stuff in common with. So that's why when you're creating your networks, you're engaging with people. You're engaging with, you know, people who have likes, dislikes, interests, and that's why you engage with people at a human level. Someone said in the chat, they're building social capital, and that is what it is. In terms of people that inspire me, when you would like me to, and when we want to wrap up, I've actually asked 4 people that I look at as very good networkers for their top tips on networking, because, like I say, we're part of an ecosystem. They have strengths I don't have. I have different strengths than they have, and I've watched their careers with interest and with inspiration, because I think they do networking so well and so naturally. And so I will share those. And they are people who I've learned a lot from. So it's people like that. It's even just people that I work with, you know, and I've watched how postgraduate students who I've seen doing the random jobs that just seem like they are to give you a little bit of pocket money as a student. I've watched how they carry themselves, and I've watched what opportunities many of them do and don't walk into. So it is picking up inspiration from people that you're around all the time, not necessarily the big wig networkers, but even those people. So there are a few people that have inspired me in networking, and I will share some of their tips as well. So you just let me know when you would like me to do that, or if you have more questions you want to talk about first. Up to you.
No, we can wrap up, and then we can leave the more questions to our audience.
Great. Okay, so then in that case, I'm going to share my screen. And I've asked 4 people that I look up to in terms of their networking ability and who I think have done it so well at various points in their career. So I'm going to start with this one. So the very first person is actually technically my boss. So the way that Friends of UKZN Agriculture works is that I'm seconded to the university for Friends of UKZN Agriculture by Lima Rural Development. And this man here, Mr. Duncan Stewart, started Lima. And the big word for him in terms of creating networks, which he's done very successfully to make Lima Rural Development, which is the same age I am, to make it a success, is to work towards this thing of collegiality, particularly with the people that you work with in your organization, but throughout your network. And it's just about, again, like what I've said, it just reinforces things that I've learned. It's about human relationships at the end of the day. And it's about getting past that point, like Duncan says, of just a vague familiarity with somebody, that introductory point where you don't really know each other. And the sooner you break past that point with as many people as you can, the quicker your network is going to grow and build momentum, and you become comfortable with people and you rely on each other. So collegiality is the big word there. Another person that I work with quite closely and really admire in terms of the networks he's built is Tafadzwa Mabadi, who's Research Associate Professor at UKZN and co-director of a new centre that we have in the School of Agricultural, Earth and Environmental Sciences. And again, it comes down to your humanity. And I think I would also use the word humility there. Don't be afraid of knocking on people's doors. People are just people at the end of the day, like he says. And it's about being kind and sincere to everybody. I think that is so important. Everyone is important. And you don't know who's going to play a role in your life one day. So build relationships with the people around you and think of others before yourself. It's a guiding principle in so many lives, and it applies in the workplace as well, and it applies in your networks. This is your life, after all. The 8 hours that you spend at work is still part of your life. So apply the principles there that you apply in every other relationship, and pay attention to people, nurture relationships, and think about what their needs are and their priorities and how you can fill those gaps. And it does create this network of mutual benefits where everybody's looking after each other. Yeah, and take time to understand people that you work with. Don't discount people, like I've said, and make people feel included and valued. And I've seen a person like to do that in the center that they've built. And they've included people from all sorts of disciplines and backgrounds. And it's because of these principles, I think. Another person I've engaged with recently is Dr. Kathy Hurley. All of these people are alumni, I should bring up. So Kathy did all of her degrees here and spent a long time at South African cane growers. And she has an example recently of an article she wrote in a magazine where she spoke about the recent unrest we've had in the province and how it affected agricultural supply chains and people who rely on them for both for the produce that they get and that they provide. And they brought together several partners very successfully. And it was because there were already existing relationships and networks there. And the big factor in the success of those networks is trust. You know, when people trust one another and you've built a relationship with someone over a long period of time professionally, then everybody can get on board when something is needed, and you can leverage your networks. And again, she mentions those principles of dignity and respect. And those are it almost seems too simple to just take it back to basic human principles, but that's what it is. And so that's Kathy. And then the last person I want to bring up is actually somebody who you can listen to on this Alumni Talk series next month. And it's Mr. Anchisa, who's a PhD candidate at UKZN in crop science. And she founded her own podcast last year during COVID, which was amazing. And it's just taken off so well. If you joined the Alumni Talk series last month, you would have listened to an agricultural graduate, Tracy, who I think is on this meeting as well. And she featured on Anne's podcast. And Anne has done a great thing with social networking. We've engaged on Twitter, just the two of us as well. And she says, you know, don't be afraid to use those things. Put yourself out there. Make sure that you are there when the doors open, when the opportunities are there. And I've seen her do it, and I've seen it be so successful. And you've got nothing to lose, like she said. Don't be afraid of putting yourself out there. And I think it comes back to using the tools that are in your toolbox. Use what you've got available to you, and don't discount what opportunities there are. Just see what is out there, and use what you have, not what you wish you had, because I think sometimes you start out in a role and you think, oh, I wish that if I knew that person, this would be so much easier. But you do know people, and there are people at hand, and start with what you have.
Okay, thank you so much, Christine, for those final words. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, how to build your network. Christine has all the details. Please note that this recording will be available, will be sent out to you by email, and it will be posted on the UKZN's YouTube page. And that's a wrap for today. Just a note, Christine will be featured on Lindelwa Msweli's YouTube channel called The Black Intel, and Khalile Pepe's blog called Blog Q. And all the details will be posted on the UKZN's College of Agriculture, Engineering and Sciences Alumni Series Facebook page. It was launched at the end of last month. So it brings us to our final segment, our questions and answers. If there are any questions, ladies and gentlemen, please post them on the chats.
I wanted to say hi to Spumi. I did see your comment. Thank you so much. Spumi is another one of our alumni who's doing very well, authored his own biography already. So Thank you, Spome. No, not from agriculture, engineering, or science, but here I am.
It's so nice to see people doing great things in different avenues, and that's why that's why we created the alumni series, to showcase the beauty of the UKZN alumni and the skills that they've learned from the skills they were taught at UKZN, because you were not taught how to do one specific thing. You were taught how to explore, expand, and be innovative. And I think Christine highlights all of those aspects. So if there aren't any questions, ladies and gentlemen, it brings us to the end of our series. Please note that we will have Zagiti and Anne Zagiti and Anne joining us next month. They will be telling us more about you as a brand. Now that we have built a strong resilience in a changing world, we know how to create our networks and to build from them. Now we need to look at ourselves as a brand. And yeah, thank you and enjoy your evening.